And our next session will look at sustainable digital transformation. 2020, of course, has brought about the urgency of digital transformation for banks and insurers. We'll find out from a global panel of leaders how they define sustainable digital transformation and look into real implementation cases and challenges. Wen Qihui, co-founder of the Center for Finance and Technology and Entrepreneurship, will host this panel. Joining him will be ING's head of wholesale banking innovation, Annerie Vreugdenhil, and also Claire Calmejane, Société Générale's chief innovation officer. Also on the panel, Delphine Maisonneuve, the chief innovation officer of AXA and CEO of AXA Next. And finally, Irene Arias-Hoffman, the CEO of IDB Lab. Now, if you want to pose questions to the panel, click on the yellow button just beneath the session window. Let's go now over to the panel and Hui to understand the priorities during the digital transformation for banks and insurers.
Good afternoon. Hello, everyone, and thanks a lot. Welcome to this panel. So as part of this panel, we're part of the Impact Summit. And we've been discussing about a lot of topics today. We've been discussing about financial inclusion. We've been talking about climate risk. We talked about the role of government. Now let's talk about the role of the financial sector, and in particular, sustainable digital transformation. We know that digital transformation over the last few years has been a very, very important topic for financial institutions. At the same time, sustainability is also extremely important. But if one is hard enough, what about combining those two objectives at the same time? Is it conflicting objectives? Do they go in the same direction? Or are we talking about apples and oranges? So I will be your moderator for today. I'm co-founder of CFT, a knowledge platform in digital finance, where we help the industry upskill in this fast-changing world. I am calling from London. I'm also an ambassador for Singapore FinTech Festival and a venture partner for Mundi Venture. And let me introduce you to the panel for today. And we have four amazing leaders for this discussion. First, in Amsterdam, let me introduce you to Annerie. Annerie Vreugdenhil, who's head of wholesale innovation at ING. And very soon, starting from January, she will be chief innovation officer at ING and head of ING Neo, that combines all their innovation efforts. She's been at ING for a long time, always and most of the time on the wholesale banking side. On top of this, if it wasn't enough, she's also chairperson of the supervisory board of Congo. She's a member of the board of R3, and she's on the executive advisory board of Square. Now let's jump from Amsterdam to Paris. And in Paris, I'm very glad to have Claire Calmejane. Claire is Group Chief Innovation Officer at Société Générale. She's a non-executive director of Boursorama, an online bank. She's the chairman of SG Ventures, and also she's the executive chairman of Trezo. Previously, she used to be an innovation director at Lloyd's, at Capgemini, a visiting scientist at MIT, and she's on the advisory board of CFT and a contributing expert on the open banking specialization. Let's stay in Paris. In Paris, we also have Delphine Maisonneuve. And Delphine is Group Chief Innovation Officer at AXA and CEO of AXA Next, where she leads an ecosystem of 8 different units, which represents 10,000 employees in 40 countries and generating 3 billion euros of revenues. Previously, her career has been at AXA, where she used to be at AXA Spain. She used to be at AXA France, and where she used to be head of AXA Group Distribution. Prior to this role, she used to be CEO of AXA Brazil, which is a good transition for me to jump to Americas. And in the Americas, we have Irene. So Irene Arias-Hoffman is the CEO of IDB Lab, which is the innovation lab of the Inter-American Development Bank, which is the main source of development finance for Latin America and the Caribbean. The objective of IDB Lab is to drive and help innovation for inclusion, and mainly by supporting early-stage entrepreneurial solutions. Prior to IDB, she used to be at the IFC for 20 years and always working on innovation, technology, venture capital, and organizational development. So it's a real pleasure to have those 4 women leaders, which to my knowledge, it's one of the first panel of women only on the innovation side. And let's try to make it very interactive and engaging. We'll make it open to questions. So if you have any questions at all, make sure that you put them here and we're going to try to answer them. But first, let's jump into definitions. We're talking about digital transformation and sustainability. That's very important, but I guess also a difficult concept. So let's try to define them. And when we think of sustainable finance, we tend to think of ESG investment. So what does really sustainability mean to you? That's going to be my question to the panel. And what would be your definition of sustainable digital transformation? Delphine, would you like to give the definition?
Sorry for this, Claire. So as an insurer, I think our job is about sustainability, meaning that our job is to provide solutions to our customers, be it corporates, be it individuals, to sustain if they're hit by external factors. So sustainability is really something we're keen on. And making the link with the ESG, what we have started to do in a very proactive way is really to work on the way we invest and the way we invest to foster transition, climate transition, and to support sustainability at society level, meaning outside of our business, the way we support the customers. So sustainability is key. I think as private operators and private investors, we can play a significant role on that front. Then you asked the second question, which is the tricky one, the digital sustainability. So I think on this front, you can have two ways of looking at it. First way is that digital fosters sustainability. When you have people working on telework, when you have people traveling less, and using digital tools, we have less paper, less environmental things, and especially if, as corporates, we work on reducing the impact of our data centers, our technology, which we are really taking actions on. So I think there is a link. It's not that obvious, still a long way to go, but definitely there is this capacity to leverage digital to the sustainability.
Thanks a lot, Delphine. And I think Claire is back. So Claire, the question was definition, to start at the foundational level of a definition for sustainable finance, sustainable digital transformation. How would you define it?
Definitely. First, for us, it's at the heart of our North Star we define in Société Générale. So back in February this year, we define, the raison d'être or North Star as a company to be co-building with our clients a better and more sustainable world by providing responsible and innovative financial solutions. And that starts there. That starts with who we are, what we want to be, and what we want all our colleagues to serve these services for clients, for customers, but more widely, to be this presence, to be this driving force of this transformative, of contributing to transformative and positive transformations. Now, when we dig up a little bit on the E, the S, and the G, what is noticeable about Société Générale, and I'm going to be very humble here, Yui, because in the panel preparation, we talked about the leadership of some of the people that are in the call, but Société Générale today is leader in renewable energy, and providing these solutions in Europe. That's something that we have dedicated teams that look at in terms of financing, developing the finance of it. And with our car leasing subsidiary, ALD, which is a European leader and number 2 in the world, we've just announced a new strategic plan called Move 2025, which is going to embody much more than cars, but actually redefining the way we interact with electric vehicles and everything that go around that to live our life better, especially in this difficult time of the pandemic and everything we can have learned about that. And when it comes to social, not just mentioning that we are a French headquartered company, so social is very, very important for us. But when it comes to social, we also have two commitments in terms of gender parity in our board. We are more and more looking at diversity and increasing the diversity in our workforce and embracing that as a lever for performance. And I think here comes the differentiation. It's not about having ratio and quotas. It's really about reflecting our customer base at the end of the day. We often say, in banking in general, women, diverse workforce represents a huge part of our customer base, and it's only fair that the leadership of Société Générale reflects this customer base to better serve them. And in terms of governance, it's embedded, and here comes the link with digital transformation, because at the end of the day, the nature of this transformation, when it meets digital, is a purpose-led transformation. And COVID have definitely stress test all of strategy and push us towards this journey, which is not anymore digital as a channel, as an IT department, as a team on the side. I think now today we are all heading towards the right direction, the direction which is going to lead us, towards this future.
Thanks a lot, Claire. So in terms of definition, it's starting to be a bit bigger, when we add those two different parts. And Irene, what do you think? And of course, with your focus also in Latin America, how would you define it?
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here, and great to be here with Claire and Delphine and Annerie. I think a great group to have, and certainly to do things in the future together with you. And clearly being at the Innovation Lab of a multilateral organization, and actually the only multilateral organization that has a dedicated Innovation Lab as a standalone institution under the umbrella of the group, this is something that we think about a lot. And certainly sustainability, for us, goes beyond ESG investments. It really entails supporting by supporting the spectrum from startups to entire ecosystems. For us, sustainability is the ability to maintain a self-sustaining balance at the firm level, at the ecosystem level, and for society as a whole. And I think it is sort of similar to some of the thinking from World Economic Forum on their about digital transformation, and how that blends into the older concept of sustainability. So sustainability does have to, we have to embed digital transformation in a new definition of sustainability, because digital is here to stay, and we need the digital world to be inclusive, and so it has to be looked at as a whole. Now, in terms of what digital transformation itself entails, for us is if we do set the solid basis with principles being followed in terms of, for example, responsible use of data, responsible use of AI, then it means digital transformation means a great opportunity to create a more inclusive society. But it has to be a very deliberate effort, where we recognize that digital transformation can be creating a person-centric ecosystem environment that is, by the way, driven by new behaviors. I think Delphine and Claire touched on a lot of examples around that. That is asset light, and that means that a lot of companies and a lot of startups can actually take part and can grow very rapidly and be part of the future solutions at a much faster pace than it was before. And it also means that we don't need to translate the inequalities of the physical world into the new digital world if we have a deliberate approach. And it also, for us, digital transformation means that it's a new paradigm in terms of operating models. It's a new paradigm in terms of the possibilities that, for example, blockchain as an Internet of Value offers to make help people get digitally included in terms of financial access much more rapidly. And we're doing that. The thing is, and what really excites me about this conversation is that it's not just theory, is that as an innovation lab, it's very, very important for us that it's a place where things happen. And in all of these that we just mentioned, we are applying that. So I'll finish with one example of that, which is how do we ensure that in combining and embedding digital transformation in a new concept of sustainability, we apply principles of responsible use of data and AI. And it's not theory. And so what we are developing through an initiative called Fairlack, real tools, practical tools for self-diagnostic of entrepreneurs of how they are ensuring that there is no algorithmic bias, that it is a transparent and data governance around their business model is sound. So those are some of the aspects that we are building into what is a new dimension of ESG. Thank you for this opportunity, Hui, and look forward to the discussion.
Thanks a lot, Irene, and perhaps now to Annerie. So how would you define those concepts?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Hui, because actually I think both sustainable finance and digital transformations are huge topics in itself, and they link here and there, but they are also, they can live without each other, I would say. So I think sustainable finance and ESG investments, I think in the context of financial services, obviously the first thing that springs to mind for people is green loans, green bonds, those kind of things. And I think that is definitely an important part. It is something that has created so much awareness amongst our customers of what they can actually do and how they can look at their own company and their own business and see where to invest to actually apply for such loans. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think, especially in financial services, we have sort of the lever to really make a difference in sustainability. And like Delphine was already saying, it's also very much about investing in certain categories. So as ING, we developed a Terra approach where we basically steer our portfolio to the -2 degrees of the Paris Agreement in a certain time frame, obviously, but so slowly we change our portfolio from its old base towards the -2 degrees. And we have organized this as an open sort of standard. So lots of banks are joining us and other investors as well. And we really track this. So I think this is part of where you will see the link with digital transformation for me. Because, it's the same everywhere. What gets measured gets done. So being able to truly measure what the impact of what you're doing and whether you're really delivering on the ambitious goals you have in this space is crucial to make anything happen. So I think there's a little bit of a link with digital transformation, but it's also, I think, digital transformation, even though it is a topic in itself, and with especially big institutions like ours, with a long history, we have our obvious legacy, and then digital transformation is really also the very basic stuff, going from paper to PDF, from PDF to see where you get the data, right? So there's a lot of basic groundwork here, which doesn't have anything to do with sustainability. This is just, you have to serve your customers better and be more efficient about stuff. But what I find super interesting about the digital aspect is where it brings extra opportunities. And one of the things that I'm also responsible for in my role is our blockchain team. And especially on blockchain, you see that with the provenance that a blockchain can actually bring, you can really bring insights to your clients and to yourself to see how sustainable people are. And we are also working with AI on, for instance, what we call an economic graph to map the distribution network, the supply chains of our clients, to basically see if we know that there's a sanction breach at a company somewhere, that we can warn somebody, obviously not telling this supplier is breaching sanction law, but you have a problem somewhere in your supply chain. Or basically pointing out to them what kind of risks they have in certain areas with maybe a change in climate, which we see more and more, where there's sort of natural disasters happening, and we can actually sort of paint a picture for them. This is still very much in its infancy. We're working on it. We have the first use cases where we actually see that there's progress. But I think this is where digital transformation, once we fixed all the basics and we get to really do the extra stuff on top of that, digital can have a huge impact on what we can achieve on sustainability.
Thanks a lot, Annerie. And you talked about digital transformation, which, for a lot of financial institutions, we have been going through this, for the last few years, and with a lot of learnings and experiences, I guess. And I'm wondering, and perhaps, Claire, what do you think, in terms of, all the learnings we've had from digital transformation, and of course we haven't finished yet, but from all those learnings of digital transformation, are there some of them that we can apply to sustainability, which could be interesting?
I think all of them, really. I mean, just last Monday, I'm very close to our head of CSR in Société. I work very closely with her. Innovation and responsibility are the two core components of the future for us. And Frédéric Oudéa, our CEO, often talk about these two marrying together and how they can be a differentiator. And actually, the journey of ESG and setting up this CSR agenda is very, very similar to the agenda of digital, which means not letting it to be one team on the side, but how do you integrate that plainly in your organization? And that goes from training all our top executive board, which have been accomplished now, and we are now training all our top managers and more, putting training available for everyone. So everyone is very informed about the societal challenge, but also, the 2-degree scenario climate. What does it mean? What does it mean shift gas? What does it mean? Do we have the choice in some region? Because, there is no silver bullet in some of this equation around financing. Let's not forget that we operate, banking and financing area in Africa and in Russia, where it's not as simple. And that's the same than digital. Again, in digital, the world is very vast, and the reality is you have to make choices. You have to make choices about technology. You have to make choices about what do you digitize first, where it's going to have the most impact. How do we make sure it's answering a customer need, and it's not a technology play. And last but not least, it's really about how do we measure it. And I joined totally Annerie, and that for a decade I've said, if you don't understand what is the added value for the customer, what is the NPS satisfaction that is coming out of your digital project, if you don't understand the NBI or the efficiencies that you're getting out of it, it means that you are not doing an efficient digital transformation. And it's exactly the same when it comes to sustainability. So after the acculturation phase, and when everyone have well understood the topic, it needs to be at the heart of the business strategy. And I think that's what we are talking about with Annerie, Delphine, and Irene of our organization, which are doing that.
Thanks a lot, Claire. So you're saying a very similar or parallel types of process. Annerie or Delphine or Irene, anything to complement, or would you totally disagree with Claire?
No, I think, first of all, I think it's a great question, because I do think that there are lots of learnings that can feed back into the way we looked at sustainability. For example, every time we look at the potential investment, and we have invested in 450 startups in Latin America and the Caribbean. So every time we look at a new investment or a new initiative, a new project in the region, we apply digital development principles, and that includes things like reusing what can be reused. It includes, of course, how to handle data. And I think if you look at how, for example, open banking and how leveraging common infrastructure that, again, allows for new players to come in, so barriers to be lower, it generates new opportunities. And I think if we apply and embed those same principles in the concept of sustainability, number one, we can do a lot more with less, and number two, we can create much more collaborative models of solving problems together, because almost always the digital transformation process starts with culture and it starts with approach, but it usually entails solutions where from the design to the execution, you have much more open source and open collaboration models, at least the ones that we're trying to pursue. And I think that's very, very valuable for the traditional approach on sustainability as well.
Thanks a lot, Irene. Annerie, you wanted to add something?
Yes, actually, I fully recognize what both Claire and Irene are saying. I think in both sustainability and in innovation, actually, what you see is that people are willing to share much more with each other without being too worried about competitive advantages. And so you really want to make stuff better. But to me, the biggest learning that they both have is that it is very different to work either on sustainability and innovation or in the core of the bank because of the longer term view you have to take. So many of the things in sustainability and innovation, it requires a bit of belief without that you already at the start really know where you're heading for and that you will actually get there. And I think that is where I find my counterpart at sustainability the most, that sometimes we say, oh man, if only we all would believe, so it's I think there's a little bit more vision and belief required to make it through and have the perseverance to actually get there.
Thanks a lot, Annerie. Delphine, would you like to add something on that same topic?
Yes, thanks a lot. So maybe two topics I want to add. So first one, what has changed maybe in the last 10 years that our people, our customers, us, we are all much more driven by purpose. Claire, you commented on that, but we're seeing it that if you want to drive superior engagement of your people, of your employees, if you want to get to not only to the mind but also to the heart of your customers, purpose is key, and sustainability is really at the heart of this purpose. So, and I will take a result, and we recently launched, as we do each year, a survey on risk manager, but also on the overall public, to say, okay, what are in your mind the most important risks of the world? So of course, this year, you can imagine, pandemic was number one, but nevertheless, climate was number two, and biodiversity, pollution, all these topics were in the top 10. I can assure you that 10 years ago, it was not the case. So this is clearly something that people are preoccupied about. Then the challenge is to say, okay, how you combine that with your business, your day-to-day business operation, the short-term, mid-term, long-term objectives that we all have in our businesses. And where I find it very interesting is that we're starting to have, thanks to data, thanks to technology, models, access to technologies that can simulate what happens to businesses, to premises, to agriculture yields, if in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time, because of the climate challenges that we have, if we have some kind of catastrophe, which we have each and every year on that part of the world. And what we're seeing at the moment as insurers, we have started a new business unit called Climate, and that is really putting together all the knowledge, research, using data and technology to provide to our customer, our corporate customer, means to anticipate, to prevent, to say, okay, what are the premises that I have? And we find that real estate owners, people that have investors, funds, that have really a portfolio of real estates, are very much interested in that, because not only we're simulating and alerting when there is a climate hazard, but we are able to simulate what if in 5, 10, 20 years. And when you work in real estate, of course, it's about tomorrow, but it's also about in 10 years or 20 years. So what I find interesting is that more and more corporates are seeing the interest of working on sustainability for their own businesses and for the purpose and the way they can impact the society, and because of that, touch the heart of their customers and their employees.
Thanks a lot, Delphine. If we talk about this topic of innovation, and which some of you mentioned, of course, there's the topic of ecosystem. There's the topic of open innovation, as Annerie said. And what do you think of the role of startups, but also of governments, of the wider ecosystem in general, in helping sustainable digital transformation for financial institutions? And perhaps I'll start with Irene, starting from the startup side.
Yeah, well, I think I gave it away a little bit before because, of course, we're big believers, to Anne-Marie's point on but really the potential of innovation and that gets and how that can be achieved mainly by supporting the incredible abundance of ideas and the entrepreneurial capacity that exists around the world. And we do see it in Latin America and the Caribbean. And we do see that a lot of those early startups are today, by the way, the largest companies with the largest market cap in the region for the first time in the history of the region. A company that was a startup some years ago, Mercado Libre, is now one of the companies with the largest market cap in the region and surpassing oil companies and so on, which used to dominate. So that should serve as an example, or the fast growth of new banks like Nubank in Brazil, that this is already happening. So startups definitely have a great role to break through old molds, to come up with new solutions. What we do see though is that we have to reduce the pain point and the friction of integrating those new solutions and startups into with corporates, particularly in regions where corporates still are pretty much behind in terms of a corporate venture capital approach. So making it easier for that collaboration and that integration to happen is really, really important. You had earlier in the Singapore FinTech Festival yesterday a great panel on open banking, and one of the startups in which we invested, FinConnecta, is helping do that interaction between startups and banks, and reducing much more the cost of innovating and the process of innovation. The second is to realize that startups, because of their agility, are much more able to prove what it means, everything that we're talking about here in terms of the potential of digital transformation and the new trends. So how interconnectedness, how cognition, autonomous systems, how virtuality, how the knowledge and data explosion can be tapped into to produce solutions that can scale much more quickly, and we are seeing it even in difficult fields like digital health that have, of course, seen such an acceleration in the past few months.
Irene,
so, yeah.
I will have to cut you because I see that Delphine and Annerie and Claire, would like to add to your point, and we have a lot of other questions. So let me cut you, and we'll get back to you just after. But Delphine, I would like to continue.
Yes, maybe 2 words, because you will cut me also, I guess. I talk too much, right? So, but one word is connecting. I think what we need also is to really work better together with the startups, and understanding that in terms of the work on data privacy, in terms of IT security, is absolutely key for corporates. So this is a growing challenge and a growing concern, and in my experience, where I've seen real challenges in using startup solution was really coming from that, because us corporates, when you collaborate with startups, at the end of the day, it's your brand that you're putting to your customers. So you need to be absolutely at ease with the level of security and data, and this is a tremendous challenge for the corporates and for the startup, for any company as such. So one thing for me is really invest on the data privacy, on the IT security, because this is absolutely key in our world of financial institution. And second, you ask the role of the public space. I think in terms of regulation, opening access, but at the same time with the right way of protecting the data of the people, I think it's absolutely essential for the future, because sustainability comes with trust. and you get trust from the external world, from the customers, for the people, from us as individuals, if you have the right setup to protect the privacy of each and everyone's data.
Thanks a lot, Delphine. Annerie, I know that you also wanted to add on top of it.
Yeah, maybe to change a little bit the focus on this, because I think to your question, so where do you need startups in this space and where do you need governments? I truly believe that you cannot do without any of them. So we need startups, we need the big corporates, and we need the governments. And there we have a bit of what I find a humbling experience. So you would really love for people to be intrinsically motivated to make this world a better place and fight climate change. But actually changing people's behavior is quite hard. So in our innovation funnel, we had quite a couple of initiatives on building startups for sustainability with data and all kind of things. And it was very, very interesting what we were doing, but how we approach this. We always work very much from the client perspective. So we validate with clients all the time whether we're doing something that they actually want and need. And then when we came to clients, so when we came to our own board with a proposal to do a lot on sustainability and look at supply chains and sustainable supply chains, those kind of things, our board was super enthusiastic. They said, oh yes, everybody in Davos talks about sustainability. This is the topic of the moment. Very, very good that you're going there. And then we went to the clients and we started to validate. And then we came to the conclusion that, and this is maybe 2 years back, not that long, that at that moment, it was very much a C-suite topic. So if we were coming with for instance, insights for a corporate in their sustainability levels to a marketing manager who you would think should be really intrinsically motivated to work on the reputation of their firm, they basically said, yeah, it's not in my KPIs, so I'm not that interested. And what we found out is that the only place where we really found a lot of traction is actually where governments had set rules to which companies have to comply at some stage. And honestly, yeah, I find it really sad that it's only coming with force when the government sets rules. But it is part of the reality. So I think we need all.
Thanks a lot, Annerie. And I think that's a good transition for the next question. When you said, which we know, in the digital transformation side, someone said a few years ago, I don't remember whom, perhaps you would remember, we talked about innovation theater. And the fact that, we're doing all those things and saying we are doing innovation, we're super innovative, but behind there wasn't really any much. So do you think that we're facing a sustainability theater also? So if yes, then, how can we prevent it? Or if no, then why? Or perhaps Claire, do you want to take this?
Definitely. I mean, for me, yes, definitely there is a little bit of innovation theater going on and going around, and what we call, in other term, green bashing, greenwashing. So, I'm just like, I had a conversation the other day where someone was explaining me, obviously, I supervise data and AI, and so somebody was explaining me that I need to cut my video when I'm doing Zoom because I'm consuming energy. I am, when my AI is running, it's consuming the same than the total life consumption of a 50 years old, a person in average in France. Yeah, okay, but what about the fact that, I'm in Zoom, so I didn't travel, I didn't take my car, I have a better quality of life, and honestly, a Zoom interaction is probably 10 times better than if I'm just, in a conversation. What about the fact that, okay, the AI is going to consume probably, some of the energy and some of the power, but at the end, it's quite limited. And I was reading, an article that was telling me that was sharing that by 2030, if we continue to consume and grow internet the same way we are doing today, basically, we will have to direct 50% of the energy production and electricity production just to run internet. And I think it's urgent to get out of the innovation theater. It's urgent to take out and to take action. And that's what we are doing in Société Générale. You know, we launched a program with 15 Tech, which is also a partner of AXA, to source, you know, the best startup in green that can help us to co-build this world. And let's be honest, there is not enough of them. So at the end of the day, we turn around the same startup. The reality is we all need to take responsibility and grow innovation and grow the sector, because this is going to be done in cooperation, in competition, but it's not going to be, you know, a major differentiating factor about the way we do business. Today, it's an emergency, and we need to get our head, you know, around that. And the second part I wanted to share is we've opened in Asia our global market incubator, you know, which you can visit and can apply with our Singapore team. And we had done a first one in Paris that was very successful, and also providing some solution to solve in capital market some of these challenges. So here are two very practical things which are not the innovation theater.
Thanks a lot, Claire. And Irene, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I think even if some companies are faking it, or even if they're not faking it, if they're getting carried away by the hype of these, I think it will soon be very, very clear who's really doing it for real. And I think so. Back to the point of Annerie on trust, and just in the middle of Leticia of the Amazon, we have a project coming up to connect investors with the reality on the ground. This is using geospatial data and using Salesforce and other tools, putting them together with a native digital platform that can help you see through where your money is going, what the impact is. This level of transparency was not available before, real time, and now it is. So I think even if there is some, I do have complete confidence that we will be able to see emerging those that are really doing it for real, and I think some of those are here in the room.
Thanks a lot, Irene. What do you think, Delphine?
So I think it's not a theater. So there will be green bashing, but there has been diversity bashing. There has been, you know, each year I think we have the new bashing and a lot of creativity on this. But I think there is a real concern in many geographies, in many companies, and more each and every year. And I think what we can do and what we're doing at AXA, except apart from what we do on our business side, is first to try to apply it to ourselves. So to have a very strict measurement and objectives on what we burn, how we impact, what's our impact, and this is why both on the each and every entity of the group is setting plans and targets on this topic. On the technology side, we are looking at our data centers, so we're using AI, and we are not going to use less AI. No, we're going to use more. But what we're doing is really work with our providers to have a more efficient way to structure our data centers, our laptops, everything, to be able to try and consume less with a much more efficient usage. And I really believe that setting examples at corporate level, with a bit of pressure on the general public, on the society, and on the governments, together may help to really move forward and make it real life and not theater.
No, thanks a lot, Delphine. I feel that Annerie wanted to add something also.
Yeah, so maybe to add something to what has been said, and I agree with many of the things that have been said. There's a bit of innovation theater, and yes, there's a bit of greenwashing. But I think, especially on sustainability, what you see is why it is also seen as a little bit of greenwashing is because we are still in need of standards. So where is the bar? And the bar is shifting all the time. So we have things that we accept today as well. This is actually really good, and it is lowering electricity consumption or CO2 emissions or whatever. But the next day we say, well, yeah, that's all nice and dandy, but it doesn't help enough. So I think what is really needed to make this a topic that everybody can really act upon is if we have standards that we can measure. And I think we're all developing that. We're moving in that direction. And the more you get there, the less it will be greenwashing and the more it will be for real.
Thanks a lot, Annerie. I see that time is flying, so we don't have that much time. I still have a lot of questions. So perhaps one question in terms of any remarkable initiatives that you have seen that made a huge impact. So very quickly, perhaps Claire, do you want to start?
I think for me, there are so many, and especially in this time of crisis. But when I look at inspiration, there is, and you know him very well, but Alexander Mars have created his foundation EPIC, which is dedicated to social and ESG transition. And it's been a couple of years, and that have really marked me. And now, I'm often listening to his podcast, unfortunately in French. But maybe wider. So that's one huge one. But so many, as I mentioned, one of our clients is working in Marseille in France and is dedicated to clean oceans. And I've just launched an initiative where you can buy a bag and just clean the beach. I think at the end of the day, and that's a big learning, is I'm not impressed by very big initiative. I'm impressed by the accumulation of the very small initiatives. And what I get out of it is everyone can make a difference. It's accessible for everyone, and we all need to take action.
Thanks a lot, Claire. Irene.
Well, to one point that Delphine said, which is on given the importance of data and on how you manage that data and create trust that that data is being governed properly and used properly. The initiative I mentioned earlier, Fair Luck, is already yielding results. We had a lot of entrepreneurs using the tools, applying them to their models, doing this self-diagnostic. And I think that would generate trust in corporates and governments that want to work with them. And they are the future of those solutions. For example, in the digital health solutions that we've supported since the pandemic started. So I invite anyone who wants to take part of this. And this is all open source, and we'd be happy to share the tools with everyone.
Thanks a lot, Irene. Delphine, what would be those remarkable initiatives for you?
Very challenging question, but I'll pick one, and to please Irene, I will pick one in LATAM. So initiative that AXA has built up with PepsiCo to support mom and pop shop owners and provide them with a protection, a health protection, and especially tele consultation in the time of COVID, because they were PepsiCo distributors. So this is where retail operator together with an insurer can provide a meaningful protection for people that are heavily impacted by COVID.
Thanks a lot, Delphine and Annerie. So what would you choose?
Yeah, actually, I think the most impactful initiative that I've seen is actually what I said earlier. It was combining startup plus corporate plus government. And I thought it was a very powerful one. It's one where we, for our real estate finance in the Netherlands, partnered with a startup who had really good insights and a good data source and app in which people, if you put in your building, it could actually calculate for you what you had to invest to get to a different energy label, and how much impact that would have, what your return on investments would be, how long it would be before you earned it back, those kind of things. And we rolled it out as an extra service to our clients, to our real estate clients at first, and said, well, you can do this. We did all kind of programs around it to make them see how important their role in the buildings is actually to help the climate. But also at some stage in 2023, we knew that there would be legislation in the Netherlands that every building should have a certain energy label. So at some stage, we already started with this 5-6 years ago. And in 2023 only is there the legislation. And in the meantime, at some stage, we said to a client, well, you know, if you still want financing from us, you really need to have, as from next year, a plan how you get to that energy label, because otherwise we think also your credit risk is becoming too high. So we used the carrot and the stick. We used the startup and the government, and together it was super impactful. Really, the steps that had been made in our client portfolio were quite impressive.
Thanks a lot, Annerie. And a last question, for all of you, and a difficult question, perhaps. So if you could be anyone in any organization, anywhere in the world, who would you be and what would you do to have the most impact on sustainability? So I'll start with Claire.
It's like catching us at the end. No, but I think we discussed. I will give you away, but you asked us. You told us before, and I was sharing. The answer of Irene. I think we. I will just be us, because at the end of the day, we talked about all these fantastic initiatives that we oversee, that we supervise, that we influence. And I love the latest example of Annerie and the power of startup, digital, and responsibility. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. I think, as I mentioned, it's accessible for everyone. It's about having a growth mindset. It's about changing, your barometer and putting yourself out of your fear zone to embrace, different ways of thinking. And maybe my best advice will be like, I have 2 small kids, and each time I'm just thinking, what I'm going to leave, for them. And it's just to reconnect with maybe our kindred spirits and just say, okay, not forgetting about why are we here and what is going to be the legacy out there. So just, sometimes being very humble in the way we think about it.
Thanks a lot, Claire. And I guess that's an answer which is quite far from where we started about digital transformation. That's definitely really important. Irene, what would be your answer?
Yeah, honestly, the best embodiment of myself, with lessons passed on from others, and with this shared ambition, the drive, the vision to see what's next, and with a ton of empathy. I think the world needs a lot of it.
Thanks a lot.
So I will make a very different answer, even though I fully share what my colleagues have said, but else, you need to bring a bit of diversity. So if I were to choose, I would choose, and maybe each week, to be a different president of a country, starting with China, the US, Russia, and that people that can pass incentives and regulation that can impact and accelerate what we all do at our individual and corporate levels. And I would do a bit like Annerie was saying. So 1 week I'm president of China. Second week I'm starting a startup that is bringing an incredible thing on sustainability. The third week I would be a CEO of a company that is really disrupting the way we invest in transition investments. So, but I think I think all of us can make an impact, can make a difference. But definitely, I would love to see CEOs, heads of governments pushing a bit more in order to accelerate what the private space is doing at the moment.
Thanks a lot, Delphine. And you, Annerie, last but not least.
Thank you. Yeah. So I think, you can actually pick anybody with a big scope, right? You can be president of a big country or the CEO of a big firm. I think one of the things in all our roles, the role modeling that we are doing, we shouldn't underestimate. People really look to what you are doing. And I think what is very important about this is they look about what you are doing rather than what you are saying. And I think this is, in the end, and I very much share that what the others have said, it is something which each and every person in the world has to change their behavior to make it work. But the role models, the visible people in the world, they are the ones that can lead by example, right? So any of them would be great for me.
Thanks a lot, Annerie, and that's a great way, to conclude this panel. So thanks a million, to our speakers, to those amazing leaders, and I learned a lot personally. I'm sure the audience also. So thank you very much, everyone, and thank you, audience, for participating. Bye-bye.
Muchas gracias.
Bye-bye.
Au revoir.
Thank you, Hui, and thank you, panelists from the banking and insurance sectors. We now have a clearer view of how difficult digital transformation can be for some, but also the potential benefits of moving toward digitization.